Okay, so I'm going to read off a couple of the comments that I got on my Shapeways video, and I have to say, you guys really left some interesting perspectives, some really cool comments, and asked some great questions. So I figured, you know what? Let me feature them in a quick video and kind of discuss things from there. So let's dive into it, shall we? Okay, so the first comment that I got is actually from my friend Dave, who I've done quite a lot of 3D design and 3D printing work for. Really cool guy, but I think he touched on a really key point as to the mentality that I have when it comes to using the equipment that I do, purchasing it, all that stuff. So let's dive into it. So Dave said, interesting content and thoughts. In many respects, you touched on the reasons why I never went forward and got a printer. It simply wouldn't have been enough to pay for itself, and now that you explained in simple terms why Shapeways went under, now I feel bad that I had you do a few special orders for me, as now I realize the effort I put into preparing a computer program to do 10 pieces that theoretically you'll never have to make again. You learn new things every day. Well, jumping to the first part of the comment that Dave left, he definitely has a very valid point. For some people, it's cheaper to just spend 10, 20 bucks to have somebody else print a handful of parts for them, and they very quickly figure out, hey, you know what, this is cool, but I'm not going to do enough to even justify buying a $150 printer plus materials, etc., etc. And for some people, it's like, wow, this is actually really powerful. I can, pretty much break even in a reasonable amount of time. I'll go ahead and do it. Now with me, when it came to my laser cutter, for an example, I honestly didn't know how big the market for not only personal laser parts that I need was going to be, but also the Etsy store, stuff for my sister and her husband, family stuff, friend stuff. You get the idea. I didn't know how big or small the market for that was going to be. So ponying up $3,000 to $5,000 for a bigger laser was like, oh geez, I really don't know if that's going to be worth it. Hence why I went with what I went with. And yeah, it has a lot of limitations, but it gets the job done and I can't complain. Now, as for the second part, for those who don't know, I still have the files that Dave wanted me to get printed for him. So thankfully in that case, they're not lost. But say you were using an external seller on, say, Shapeways or a similar site, and they opted not to migrate their models to somewhere else, then yeah, those items are pretty much going to become very, very, very valuable collector's items in the model train community. But I think Dave's comment was worth highlighting just because of the fact that he mentions the financial side of things, and it's a valid point. There's no shame in asking somebody to do something for you. We're more than happy to do it. Just, give us a good file. So Dale commented and said, so Calvin, what will you do about continuing to produce the products you had on Shapeways? We'll be looking for another producer. I really hope so, because I think you had some really neat narrow gauge items there, which were both well designed and reasonably priced. I never understood the pricing structure at Shapeways, as I would see two practically identical items, one priced $40 to $50 more than the other. Frankly, I thought some of the prices there were outrageous for what people were actually getting for their money. Anyways, I have an extensive list of your products that I will be needing in the coming months, and I sincerely wish you the best of luck in finding another manufacturer. Well, thanks, Dale. That really, really means a lot, because while I didn't make a ton of money off the Shapeways store, getting $35-ish every couple of months, it wasn't a bad thing. Help, pay for Spotify or get some Taco Bell or, it was something. It was not my sole source of income, but that really means a lot. So going to Dale's first question, will I be looking for another producer? Yes. Now, in the past, I did a little bit of resin printing, and I'm honestly still very on the fence about getting back into it. The main reasons being are the resin isn't exactly the nicest material. It's quite messy, and I was starting to become a little bit allergic to the resin, so I just outright stopped, period, full stop, not doing it. That being said, though, I am considering looking at other places. I'm not going to say, oh yes, I'm going to put my stuff on here, and that's not going to happen. But I am looking into options. Another option would just be doing a batch order of items through, say, a company like Xometry or something like that. So that's all to be determined, but I am looking into alternatives. Don't worry, there are other companies that can do printing. It would just be nice if there was a company that you could just upload the stuff to a marketplace and they took care of it from there. Now, as for the pricing on things, Dale brings up an interesting point. And what's worth mentioning is part of the pricing was 100% out of my control or anybody who ran the shop control. Shapeways pretty much charges you based on the volume that item takes up inside the printer. Now, I'm going to use my reusable water bottle here as an example. Now, even if the inside of this, let me take the lid off. Even if the inside of this is hollow, so you're technically not really needing any material on the inside, they're still going to charge you for the volume that this takes up inside the machine, because realistically speaking, they probably can't stack parts inside of here, and even if they could, it would behoove them to just charge for the volume this takes, so just in case that fails, that works out. Now, let's say this thing was solid. Yeah, they're definitely going to charge you for all the material it takes to print this. Now, I will say, though, that, yeah, some of the shops over there, I think, had a slightly inflated sense of what their products were worth based on the size of the item and knowing the approximate cost to get something done. If I was selling things at cost, I'll be honest, most of the items on my Shapeways store, I was making between $2 to at most $5 on per sale. It really all depended upon the item, but I figured, you know what, this is just something that runs in the background. It only took my time to produce the file. 9 times out of 10, these were files I already had because they were for projects I was doing with my friend Scott for Kit Bash Brothers, myself, other people, and I had permission to upload them. So it was kind of like, you know what, I want to offer things to people at a reasonable rate, and I understand a lot of people in the model train hobby are on a fixed income, or even if they have a decent income, they're still setting aside money for everything else. So I wanted to try and keep it fair pricing wise. But yeah, some of those prices on there were like, what? You want that much? So I hope that clears things up a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of just as at least I understood it. And this was also based on what somebody who worked for Sculpteo, which is a 3D printing company that I used a lot, explained to me regarding the pricing, which was kind of handy. So the last one comes from Tom Knapp, who you might remember from that video I shot years ago at the Great Train Show in San Jose, where he was showing how he made his super awesome, ridiculously tiny NN3 stuff. If you're at all interested in that, I'll have a card to the video, and I highly recommend that you go check out the stuff that Tom does. It is mind-blowing, but enough drilling over what Tom does. Tom commented, Calvin, in addition to items in my Shapeways shop to be printed in one of the resins, I had parts to be ordered in Lost Wax Brass. I think Shapeways did a very good job with these. The detail is small as 0.15 millimeters and 0.4 wall thickness. That's really thin for those who don't know. 0.4 wall thickness is under 20 thousandths of an inch. That is thin. Can you recommend another vendor who can cast brass parts from my STL files with that level of resolution? I tried Cloudcraft, iMaterialize, eMachine Shop, and others, but so far I've not found anyone who can meet the same level of detail from the same STL files with which I have been getting parts from Shapeways. Still waiting to hear back from Sculpteo, Tom K. So I was actually going to recommend Sculpteo. I had never used them for brass casting, but I had seen some of their direct DMLS, direct metal laser sintering parts in 6AL V4, titanium, aluminum, some other stuff. They also did binder jetting, those are not the methods that Tom is mentioning here. Honestly, I would say the only one that I know of is Sculpteo. You might want to see if there are companies that will do small batches of foundry work, maybe reach out to some jewelers in the area who may or may not know people. Yeah, honestly, I don't know, because what Tom would do is he would get some of his stuff made as a 3D print, then he would send that off to get investment cast, so the print itself became the investment. And then obviously, it sounds like Shapeways did some of that. And I know a lot of people who did traction model railroading really, really liked Shapeways for getting things like custom, like I think they were called like people guards or things like that needed to be with fine detail that you couldn't get with plastic, but you could get it with metal. So Sculpteo, if you're listening, huge market in the model training community for lost investment cast brass parts. I'm just saying. So Brandon, if you're still over there and you're watching this, buddy, reach out to me. I've got some people who probably would be interested. So that will conclude this video. As for what the future holds for Shapeways or other companies, I have no clue. The only alternatives that I can think of at the moment are, as I said before, Xometry, which pretty much just acts as kind of like a middleman. They just farm the work out to a whole bunch of other companies. And Sculpteo. I mean, those are the only two that I've personally worked with. I do know there's other websites like 3DP Train, mini prints, and things like that. But I also know right now they are just absolutely swamped with people going, "Hey, can you host my stuff and sell this on here, please, please, please?" Which is good that there are people who want to migrate their stuff to another platform. I am 125% for that. But I don't want to send any more people their way if they're just absolutely slammed at the moment as well. So, it is what it is. But if any of you guys have suggestions on places that especially can do the lost brass casting, please comment down below, and I will be sharing that on all the 3D printing and model train pages, because there are a ton of people who really need to know answers to that. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and well, I'll see you next time here on Make It with Calvin with, I don't know, stuff coming down the pipeline.